So hi and welcome to another video, and today we're going to be checking out the FPS in Valorant on a 3090 Strix overclocked with a 10900K CPU running stock clock here. If you're not familiar with my channel, I'm going to give you all the gaming statistics and data to give you the competitive edge over your rivals here, so you're going to want to stick around and look at this information. I'll also be doing it on the 3080 as well. And if you want to understand more about the reflex, go check my other video out. I'll put a link in the description where it goes into a lot of detail. I've had to do these in two different videos because it will be so long. This one's going to be focused on FPS, and my other one's focused on the reflex and latency. Definitely worth checking out if you want to get the best performance. Make sure you're having that advantage on the first shot. So the PC specs are also linked in the description, as well as the graphic settings that I've used for low and maximum. So starting off here with low settings, 1080p, threading off. We won't turn reflex on at all during this video. Like I said, it's in the other video. Links in the description, which will go into more of the latency stuff, which you definitely have to watch. And the average FPS here is 945 FPS, which is a decent amount of FPS here, especially average. We're certainly going to see here whether the new 360Hz monitors are going to be able to be used here with Valorant. Turning multi-threading on here, and we see an increase again. It's 1003 FPS, which is nuts. This is probably the first game I've seen that I've had 1000 FPS in. This is just insane amount of FPS here. Flicking the graphics to maximum here, and you can set nearly halves the FPS, bring it down to 543 FPS. On max settings, turning multi-threading back on here, you can see a decent increase here, 781 average FPS, that's a good increase here. Multi-threading here seems to be working on 1080p. Dropping into 1440p or 2K here. We've got low settings for graphics, and we've got multi-thread turned off, and we're looking at 971 FPS, which is pretty decent still for a 2K monitor. In fact, it's higher than the 1080p average, which is interesting. Even the max FPS is higher with 1129. Turn on multi-threading here, and you see we now hit 1010 FPS average, which again is just crazy, with a maximum of 1214 FPS in 2K. Say what? That is insane. Flicking over to max settings here with threading off, and we've got an average of 598 here, which is still pretty decent. Again, it's higher than 1080p, which is interesting on average FPS. And then turning multi-threading on here, we get an average of 765, which is a little bit lower than 1080p here. Still decent, but it's crazy amount of FPS still. Again, multi-threading here showing that it gives you a boost in FPS in these settings. Flicking over to 4K here, low graphic settings, threading off, and we get, again, an insane amount of average FPS of 959 FPS. Again, slightly higher than 1080p, which is interesting to see. Ping multi-threading on, almost seeing nearly 1000 FPS here, 993 average FPS, with a maximum of 1124 in 4K. This is ludicrous for 4K. So Valorant obviously does something with its textures here to allow that kind of performance. Flicking max graphics on here on 4K, and we do see quite a significant drop here, down to 443 average FPS. And I say it's a significant drop compared to the 959 FPS that it had. 443 FPS on 4K is still pretty incredible, to be fair. In fact, it's pretty damn crazy, man. So then flicking on threading here, we're getting an average of 447 FPS, which isn't as big as some of the other ones we've seen on max settings. The jump here once multi-threading's on. Still pretty decent here. Again, it's pretty level across all the board here in this setting if you look for min, max and average here on 4K. So taking all of this into account now, and which ones would we use because we class as the best settings, most people would say 1080p is, and really could probably use 1080p or 2K here. Both of them are very, very similar. Maybe the reflex settings will make a difference, and that'll maybe dictate which resolution I would run. So you can check that out, as again, the link is in the description. If you don't know already, go and check it out now. We'll get a cup of tea because it's going to blow your mind with those statistics. But the margin between 1080p and 2K here is so small that you could run either of these in low settings. That would be my preference, and I'd probably run with threading on if I took a view at just these FPS settings here, if you're not bothered too much about the latency. Within Valorant, you can clearly run a 360Hz monitor in 1080p. It's not going to have any problems on this kind of spec PC. In fact, probably a lot of the lower spec PCs could run it as well. Be interesting to see if the 3080 can do it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be able to, but we'll check out those statistics as well. You could also run 4K here, but I'd want to see some more reflex on that again. The FPS is certainly up there, even with max settings. You've got the FPS, so you can have no issues there. And that's it. So I hope this video has been useful. I've done some other benchmarks as well. Go check them out if you want to for Cyberpunk as well as Call of Duty Cold War, and I'll be doing some more. Also check out my other mouse reviews as well if you haven't, because I go into this kind of detail on there as well. So catch you later. See you soon. Bye bye.